Hello. Welcome to the final Lakes Region Forum event of 2022. This year's events were sponsored by the Winthrop Area Federal Credit Union and Winthrop Library Foundation. Tonight we are excited to welcome paranormal investigator Nomar Slevik, who will guide us through a presentation on reported extraterrestrial sightings, abductions, crop circles, and UFO hotspots around New England. He does have some copies of his books for sale here tonight if you're interested, including one of his new releases, Otherworldly Encounters. It'll be right back there. Nomar was born in Fort Kent and grew up in Bar Harbor. When he's not investigating the paranormal, doing podcasts, writing books, or giving talks at libraries, he can be found riding his e-bike around Down East Maine. Please welcome Nomar Slevik.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
So, I'm Nomar Slevik, and I'm a writer, researcher, interviewer, and quasi-sometimes investigator of all things strange. But I do have a particular focus on all things extraterrestrial, UFO related. That's a special interest of mine. But before we get into some main stories, I want to whet everyone's appetite with a story that I affectionately call Robot Grandma. Okay? So, a 2-year-old boy and his parents and their dog all decided to go camping at a state park. They got there in the late afternoon. They set up the awnings and the chairs, and they got the grill out. And they were playing around and having fun, and as 5 o'clock or so approached, Dad got out the grill, and he's flipping some burgers, put some hot dogs on. Mom's inside the RV, and she's doing the buns and making a salad. And the boy and the dog are in front of Dad, in front of the grill, running around, playing, rolling on the ground, having fun. Well, after a moment, as Dad is grilling, he can't hear his son or the dog anymore, so he looks up, and he starts yelling for him. There's no response. So Mom hears what Dad's doing, and she comes out and she's like, "Where's our son?" And he's like, "Well, he must have just gone down the trail a little bit," because there was a trail just off to the right of their campsite. And he's like, "I'll walk down there, I'm sure he's right down there." So Dad starts walking down and he's yelling out. After a few moments, the dog runs up, and it doesn't appear agitated, almost happy to see him, just how the dog normally acts. And he's like, "Boy, where's my son?" And the dog obviously can't tell him, and he runs back to camp. So the dad continues down the trail, and he's looking off trail, he's looking down the trail, and then it turns into a jog, and then it turns into a run as he's getting more and more scared that he can't find his son. And before he knew it, he was almost 2 miles down the trail. And he knew that his son couldn't make it that far by himself. So he runs back up to camp, tells the wife what's going on. They get on the horn and they call a bunch of family members. So about 20 minutes later, 15 family members show up to help search for the boy. A couple of hours go by, still no son. The sun's coming down. So now they call the police. The police and search and rescue show up, and they're looking for the boy. Everybody's looking for the boy. And it wasn't until 11 p.m. that night that a rescuer found the boy. And he was sitting right in the middle of the trail, less than a mile from the camp. His father had gone down that trail. Rescuers had gone down that trail, and he was just sitting there. And he was alive and well and happy to see his folks. He had a few scratches, a little dehydrated. His parents brought him to the doctors, clean bill of health. It wasn't until about 3 weeks later, Grandma is babysitting the boy because the parents have to work late. So she's cooking dinner, the kid's playing, and he walks into the kitchen while she's cooking, and he goes, "I don't like the other grandma." She's like, "What are you talking about?" The one that looks like you, I don't like her. And she's like, you got to explain yourself. What do you mean? And he's like, granted, this is a 2-year-old boy and I'm an adult articulating what he's saying. So he basically said that while he was playing, a woman that looked like his grandmother came up to him and led him to a cave not far from the campsite. And inside that cave were purses and guns. That's a weird thing for a 2-year-old to say. And there was this ladder and there was a light at the top of the cave. And he said the woman, the grandma, climbed up the ladder and that her head almost was illuminated like the light, like her head kind of changed. And she pulled down this piece of paper, this big piece of paper, and it was sticky. And she put it on the ground and asked me to poop on it. Well, that's weird. And he didn't have to go. So he said no. And she kind of got upset, grabbed him by the hand, led him out to the trail, and she said, sit here, somebody will find you. And that's the tale of Robot Grandma. And that's all I know about it. But a nice little tale to whet the appetites for what's to come. All right. You want to move into some Maine stories? Well, this first story is my own. I grew up in Fort Kent, and we lived on Main Street. And running parallel to Main Street was the St. John River. And right beyond the St. John River is Canada. You could literally throw a rock and hit Canada. That's how close we lived. So I go to bed one night as normal, nothing out of the ordinary. And I'm woken up in the middle of the night by a loud bang. I don't know what it is, but my eyes kind of pop open and I'm like searching around for what could have made that noise. And then I start to hear light taps at my window. So I look over there and the sky lights up. And I was like, oh, a thunder and lightning storm. And so I wanted to kneel up on my bed to watch the thunder and lightning storm. And the St. John River was really rough and it was really going. And I was seeing the sky light up. And every once in a while I saw the little lightning bolts. And I'm like, this is amazing. And after just a moment, there was this really, for lack of a better term, like a really obscene lightning bolt. Like if I were to ask you to draw a lightning bolt, you would draw that jagged yellow line, or it kind of looks like the charging indicator on your smartphone. And it was stuck in a cloud. This is how my young mind perceived it, and it's how my adult mind remembers it. But it was a lightning bolt stuck in a cloud, and there was electricity coming off of it. And there were booms associated with it. And I'm not sure what happened after that. I just remember waking up in the morning. I go to the bathroom. And as I'm walking back from the bathroom to my room, I can see out my windows. And the lightning bolt, it's still there. So I ran downstairs to get my dad. And I brought him all the way upstairs. I don't know why we didn't just go the hell outside the front door. But I brought him all the way upstairs because I was 4 years old at the time. This was 84, something like that. I'm dating myself, but that's all right. And I bring my dad upstairs. The lightning bolt's gone. So I'm trying to explain to him the thunder and lightning storm and all that stuff. And he reacted as any other father would react with a 4-year-old trying to tell him something crazy. And he was just like, yeah, kind of patting my head. But I think I must have been really animated because he kind of had to kneel down, put his hands on my shoulder and say, buddy, it didn't even rain last night. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that didn't scare me. I was just confused. I didn't know what UFOs were. Maybe I knew what ghosts were, but I was just more confused than anything. So fast forward a couple weeks, and I'm being woken up in the middle of the night. Middle of the night to a 4-year-old, I don't know if it's 10 p.m. or 3 a.m., but I just know I'm woken up in the middle of the night. And it's my dad, and he's bringing me downstairs. And when I get downstairs, I see my sister and my mom. And my sister is all dressed up in her winter attire. And my mom kind of manhandles me and gets me into all my stuff. And we're just like, what's going on? It's like, come on, you got to come outside and see this. You got to come outside and see this. So my dad scoops me up, and my head's buried in his chest because I'm freezing. And we get outside and we go down the steps of the porch and we go out onto the front lawn. And he's like, look up, buddy, look up and see this. And I was just scared. I thought my eyes were going to freeze if I took my head out of his chest, but I did. And I saw these crazy ribbons of green and blue, and I think there was a hint of red. And it was the one and only time I've ever witnessed the Northern Lights. So what those two events, and especially happening so close together, I think instilled in me at such a young age, is that weird stuff happens in the sky. I should probably pay attention. So ever since then, I have. And I look up more than most. And I would say at this point, I'm 44 years old, and I've seen 13 UFOs in my lifetime. And when I say UFO, I mean unidentified flying object. I'm not saying it was extraterrestrial. And some of those maybe could have been explained away, but there's a few, and I'm going to tell you one of those stories, or two of them actually, where maybe they were extraterrestrial, you know. It's an interesting thing to grow up in Maine, and you hear stories from afar, Area 51, Roswell, New Mexico, things in Arizona, Phoenix Lights, stuff like that. But to know that they are happening in your own state is fascinating to me. So when I was a teenager, I started collecting stories of the strange. I didn't care if they were ghost stories or reincarnation stories or UFO stories. I was collecting them all. And I was with my buddy one night, and I was in high school. I think I was 17, might have been 16. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bar Harbor, but there's West Street in Bar Harbor, which runs parallel to the ocean. And when you're driving down West Street, there's all these buildings that are on the ocean side. But in between the buildings, you can kind of see bits and pieces of the ocean as you go down. And then West Street ends at the marina in Bar Harbor. You can't go straight anymore, you can only go right, and I think that's Main Street. So I'm riding with my buddy, and I see this really bright thing on the water. And it's running parallel with the car. I can't imagine it's going very fast. I'm going 25 miles an hour, and it feels like it's keeping pace. What was weird about it is, well, yeah, Nomar, something's on the water with lights. It's a boat, you know, especially in Bar Harbor, right? But what was weird about it is that the lights went from the top all the way to the surface of the water. And to my knowledge, I mean, I'm not a maritime expert, but to my knowledge, even a cruise ship doesn't have lights that go all the way to the surface. There's that hull, you know, and there might be some lights around the hull, but you don't really see lights that go all the way down to the surface. And it was almost like Christmas lights were around this thing. And it seemed pretty big, but I couldn't gauge how far it was, and I kept seeing it just in between buildings. So my buddy's sitting next to me. I'm like, you see this thing? And he looks. He's like, yeah, that's weird. It's got to be a boat, but it's weird. I'm like, yeah. So we get to the marina, and we're seeing it unobstructed, but it's too far away to make heads or tails of it. All of the lights have kind of condensed into just one bright light that's on the water moving. And I suppose if, you know, it's dark and there's some light pollution, maybe my vision is a bit askew and I'm seeing it incorrectly. So I said, hey, let's go down to Albert Meadow and we might be able to get a better look at it. Because the way the water works, it kind of goes around this bend and then you can go out to open water. And Albert Meadow is right on the cusp of that bend. In Albert Meadow, it's actually just a street, and then there's a park at the end of Albert Meadow. I forget the name of it now. But there's parking and an unobstructed view of the ocean. So we kind of race up there, park down at Albert Meadow. And we had beat it there. So we're standing right at the edge. The water is right here. And we're, you know, looking out crazy. waiting for this thing to go by. And sure enough, it comes into view, and it's huge. It's smaller than a cruise ship, but bigger than like a lobster boat or something. Not to mention it's winter, and we don't get cruise ships in Bar Harbor in the winter. And a lobster boat, sure, but this didn't look like a lobster boat. What we saw was this domed thing on the water. And it appeared to be like one single light up top, and it just kind of kept getting bigger as it hit the surface of the water. And we didn't know what to make of it. It didn't make a sound. It didn't speed up. We just watched it as it slowly made its way out to open water. We didn't see it take off if it was in fact a UFO. We didn't know what to make of it. My buddy's like, it had to have been a boat. I'm like, it might have been a UFO, man. He's like, UFOs aren't on the water. I'm like, they sure as hell are on the water, and sometimes under the water. And he's like, I don't know. So anyways, I drop him off, I go home, and I write everything down. And that was really, besides the events that happened when I was really young, that was the catalyst for documenting these types of weird encounters. And since that day, I would ask friends and family, you got a ghost story, you got a UFO story, and I would scour the police beat of our local papers to see if anybody had reported anything, and I'd cut them out and keep them. And I asked a buddy one day, just randomly, if he had ever seen a UFO, and he lived in Southwest Harbor. I think his parents had some money because they lived on the water and there was a balcony. It's not a thing I know about, but he was out there having breakfast one day, and this was, 8 o'clock in the morning, and he's eating breakfast, not even looking at the water, but he hears like a splash or some sort of movement in the water in front of him. And so he looks up just in time to see, like, almost parallel with his house, and his house was kind of on a hill, so maybe 100 yards up or something. He sees this silver thing dripping water, and it keeps climbing up and until it's out of sight. It's the only time he'd ever seen it. But me being 17, 18 years old, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I wrote all that down. And I scoured the paper, and sure enough, there were 3 other reports of people who saw the same thing in town, and it did make the police beat, which was really cool to me. And I had gotten the inside scoop before the paper came out, and that made me feel pretty cool, So, collecting stories. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s, and I have a bookshelf in my room, and it's filled with UFO books and local books, typically on ghosts, because there's not a whole lot of books about UFOs or other topics in Maine. And I'm looking at them, and there's one particular book. It's called The Supernatural Side of Maine. It's by C.J. Stevens. It's out of print, and I highly recommend that you try to find it at your local mom and pop or eBay or Amazon if you have to. And in that book, it was riddled with ghost stories, UFO stories, werewolf stories, all in Maine. And that book fascinated me. And I'm looking at it on the shelf, and I'm seeing all these other ghost books. I was like, someone should really write a book about UFOs in Maine. That's an interesting idea, and I kind of go on with my life. It wasn't until maybe 8 years later, I was like, yeah, I want to look at my collection of stories. And I pull out my folder, and there was a ton of them. I'm like, maybe I should write that book. No, I'm not a writer. Well, I am, actually. I write songs. At the time, I was writing a lot of fiction work. I have a hobby of writing fictional horror stories. Maybe I am a writer. Maybe I can do this. I don't know. So I just started writing down some of these stories. And when you're looking at a police beat thing, it's 3 sentences. You don't have a lot to go on. And I didn't know anything about interviewing people or if a name wasn't in there, how do I find a name? Can I call the police? I don't like the police. Should I call them? So I didn't know what to do. So I just started writing and kind of filling out the story. Well, if it took place in Southwest Harbor, I can write about Southwest Harbor a little bit of history of Southwest Harbor, see if there's been other stories from Southwest Harbor, and kind of round out the story. I did that enough times that I was like, I think I have a book's worth of material here. Well, how the hell do you publish a book? I didn't know how to do that either. So I Googled it. And there's a surprising amount of resources on how to either self-publish or to submit manuscripts for writing. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this. So instead of just picking out random publishers, I went back to my bookshelf. I'm like, well, these guys put out books about ghosts, and these people put out books, they put out the C.J. Stevens book. I'm going to find all these publishers online and see if they might be interested in publishing a book on UFOs in Maine. So what you got to do actually is go to each individual publisher's website and see what their submission process is. And every one of them, God bless them, got to be freaking different. Basically what it boils down to is you need an outline and hopefully some sample chapters. I had both of those things. So I put together the best presentation that I could, and I emailed all of these publishers. And I got a lot of no's. I got some that didn't even respond, and it was frustrating, as you can imagine. So I let you never know when they're going to respond, so I let months go by waiting to hear back, And once I realized it's not going to happen, I started researching self-publishing options. And there's a lot of resources out there for that too. So I found a site that I thought was, reputable and not a vanity publishing. Vanity publishing is when you pay to have somebody put out your material, and it was in my late 20s, early 30s, and didn't have a whole lot of money, so that wasn't going to be an option. So I found this site, and all you do is upload your manuscript, and they format it into a book, and there's a cover creator and all this fun stuff. And then you can order what's called a proof copy, which is a printed copy of what the book will look like if you, in fact, choose to sell it through them. So I ordered one, and you had to pay for it. I think it was $5. And I'm waiting for this proof to come in the mail. The day it came in, my roommate at the time emailed me, said, "Hey, your package came today." And I was like, oh, shit, okay. I'm going to go home for lunch, and I'm going to look at this book. When I parked my car to when I was walking into the apartment, I got an email from Schiffer Publishing, and they were interested in putting my book out. On my walk in to look at this self-published book, this proof copy. And I'm reading it, and it says, it's kind of a form letter, if you will, but we're interested. If you are, here are the terms. If you're interested, reply, and we'll send out a contract. So I go inside, I open the proof, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, this is amazing. This is something I wrote, and it's tangible. It's in my hand. That's really tempting to just go with the thing that's done. So I open the book, and I'm like, this looks weird. And it's all double-spaced. You guys read books. You don't see a book that's double-spaced. It looks weird. It's too much white space. And I didn't realize that. I just uploaded my Word document file, which was double-spaced, and that's how it looked. I'm like, okay, well, I can fix that, I guess. So I'm looking at the book, and I'm kind of looking at the phone, and I'm like, shit, I got to get back to work, and what do I do here? And it became obvious after a moment. Go with the publisher, man. It's like being signed. That's like, a music artist being signed. That's like an athlete being signed. It's definitely not like those things, but that's what my mind was like. So I went with the publisher, and they were absolutely wonderful people. A completely green author who didn't know how to format anything. He just had a pile of ideas and stories. And this editor that worked with me, she took the time to understand me and to help me shape this manuscript into something that's readable. And in 2014, this was a 2-year process. In 2014, is when they finally published my first book, which is UFOs over Maine. And it was available everywhere in New England. You could walk into a Walmart and see my book, or a Target, or a Bull Moose, or whatever. And my book was there. And I couldn't believe it. I would go visit the stores and take pictures by the book. I honestly still do that. So but it was amazing. What wasn't amazing was the money. That was essentially a lifetime of work up until that point, although I didn't really know that at the time, but a lifetime of work that kind of boiled down to, we make most of the money because we're taking a chance, and here's a little something for you, which is not livable by any means. I could maybe make a car payment or, something like that. But I really didn't care because you could walk into Walmart and see my book. So I thought that was cool. And publishers, only in my experience, in the contract I signed, they give you, or there's a stipulation in there where you have to give them first right of refusal for your next book. And in my case, it was my next 2 books. Maybe I should have read that a little better. But so UFOs over Maine comes out. It actually does surprisingly well, Not a huge moneymaker, but it sold well throughout New England. So they started bugging me in 2015 about, hey, have you thought about a new manuscript? And I was like, yeah, UFOs over Maine Part 2. Because there's thousands of stories. I submitted to them over 300 pages. And they ended up hacking it all up to, I think it's 135, 150 pages. And there were so many more stories to tell. And they're like, Part 2s don't really do well. You got anything else? So I thought about it. I submitted a couple other things, and they weren't interested. And they said, well, you can, if you have to do UFOs over Maine Part 2, if that's what you're settled on for your next project, then we don't want to work with you. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's a thing. And I was back to square one. Do I self-publish this next book? Do I find a new publisher? What the hell do I do? I had a little bit more experience, and my editor gave me a lot of insight. And I started submitting a manuscript to other publishers. And it wasn't just New England publishers, this was nationwide publishers, but that they published regional books. And another publisher was interested. I couldn't believe it. Oh. We'll see what happens here. Okay. Yeah, I'm not here. Okay. So this publisher was interested in my stories, and they're like, this is great, we want to put it out. We now need 65,000 words from you. That's a lot of words if you're not an author or if you're a new author, because my other book was about half that. Oh, so you want a book this thick as opposed to this thick, that's how my mind works. And they're like, yeah, dummy. And I'm like, okay. So that brought me to the art of rounding out the story, like I was telling you. Let me talk about the town. Let me talk about other stories maybe surrounding the town, and then I'll get to the crux of the big story that I want to tell. That feels a lot of words, and it makes it almost a novelization of people's stories and makes it easy to read. Because when I was in high school, my library had about 4 books on UFOs, and they were a slog to get through. They read like textbooks. And the heart of the little stories that were in there were amazing. But there was all this pontification on, what does it all mean, or where are they from, and, all this stuff that I wasn't interested in. I was interested in people's stories and how it affected them. It's a big, anybody in here seen a UFO? Raise a hand. Yeah, so we got some. It's a big deal. And for some people, it's life-changing. And I don't care if it's a light in the sky or if you feel like you've been taken aboard. It can be life-changing. And those are the stories that I wanted to focus on. So the new publisher, well, what do you want to call it? UFOs over Maine Part 2. And they're like, no, we didn't publish the first book. We can't put out a book that's a part 2 to a book in another publisher. Well, I didn't know that. So they're like, come up with another title. Well, I wanted the name to be UFOs Over Maine 2, Otherworldly Encounters. And I'm like, scratch UFOs Over Maine 2, Otherworldly Encounters is up. That's a cool title. So I submitted that as the title, and they're like, yeah, but now you need a subtitle. I don't know why all these books need a subtitle, but they got them. And they added a subtitle. I'm like, yeah, whatever the hell, that's fine. And the editor that I worked with then was even 10 times better than my first editor. And that's nothing against my first editor, but this was a bit of the big leagues, and it was Llewellyn Publishing. If you walk into a BAM or Barnes & Noble and you're looking at the paranormal books, over half of them are Llewellyn Publishing, and they do have a whole tarot card brand. So I was like, wow. And I actually read the contract thoroughly. Still wasn't a lot of money. A little bit more than Schiffer, but it wasn't a lot of money. I'm not going to quit a job and write. So go through the whole process. It's a year-long process. I don't know why that process is so long. I guess because I'm not the only author at their publishing house, which makes sense. But when you're the author, you're like, just put it out. It's done, you know? It's edited. Just put it out. It was edited, and it was still 8 months before it was going to come out. It's crazy. But what they do is they put up what's called a net galley. And a net galley is people that are interested in reviewing books before they come out. They can read your book in PDF form. And so they put it up in a net galley, and it was getting some pretty good reviews. And so, all right, because I always love an October release date. You know, that's my, October's my jam. But they're like, let's put it out in July. How's that sound? I'm like, that's a weird month. But I'm not in charge. And they asked me as a courtesy, because if you don't know, publishers do whatever the hell they want to do and just put out your thing when they want to. So I went along with that as well. And that was an amazing reception. And then came the piece in the contract about first right of refusal. I had another book. It was about a gentleman from New Hampshire who's had a lifetime of encounters. We're talking from 3 years old to this day. He might even be in the room right now because he's a really good guy and he supports me. And it's called Granite Skies. And I submitted it to that publisher. And they were like, yeah, this is good. Let's put it out. I'm like, okay. First, though, let's get the money right a little bit, And like, what do you mean? Because they sent the terms over, and it was the same terms as the book 3 years ago. Even McDonald's will, you get a little something, maybe. No, not them. No increase in price. That didn't sit well with me. This is a year. It's 2 years of my life writing these things. And I don't feel as though I'm getting compensated fairly. So, the gentleman that I wrote the book about, I asked him, I was like, hey man, the money's not right. And I don't know if I want to put the book out with them. But I'm under contract for another 2 years. So if we walk away, might mean we can't put the book out for another 2 years. He's like, I trust you. You do what you got to do. So I go back to them and I go, how about this? Here's what I want. And I would like final approval on the cover and the title. But the body of the book, edit as you see fit. They refused to do it. And it was so important for the subject of the book and me to have the title and the cover that we wanted. We had to have what we wanted, or it wasn't going to work for us. And also, the body of the book, we both fell in love with. And I'm like, I don't think I can budge on that either. Sure, there might be some editing things that need cleaning up. I'm cool with that. But they wouldn't even grant me, right of final approval on the manuscript. And I was afraid they might change too many things. So I told them no. And I don't think small publishers are used to hearing no. very often. So they came back with another offer. This is 4 days now. And I'm losing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I've made the biggest mistake in my life. I just walked away from a publisher, and we've got this amazing book that's got to come out. And their last offer was laughable, in my opinion. Still, they're lovely people, but it was laughable. So I said no. And then I asked them, can I take the manuscript and do whatever I want with it now, or do I have to wait 2 years? And those good people at Llewellyn allowed me out of my contract so I could do what I wanted with that manuscript, which means since it was done and all edited, we could put the book out how we wanted to. So during a pandemic, without a publisher, we put out a book called Granite Skies, which tells the story of Mike Stevens and his extraterrestrial encounters from 3 years old all the way to current times. And we did it our way, and it's the most proud of anything I've ever done. And it was an amazing experience. And we walked away from a publisher just so we could put it out exactly the way that we wanted to. So I definitely hope you check out that book. How about a few more stories, though, instead of all my writing BS, huh? So this story is about a woman named Sue from Rangeley, Maine. Rangeley, that's way out there. And this took place in the 90s. She was married at the time, had 2 younger kids. And it was about 9 o'clock at night. And the kids were already sitting on the couch. They had snacks. And a movie was about to come on TV that they wanted to watch. So mom and dad, they decided to go upstairs to put on their own movie and kind of like go to bed and call it quits for the night. So they're up there, and dad's getting undressed. Mom's in the bathroom. She's brushing her teeth. And she hears her husband say, what in the hell is that light? And she kind of pops her head out, toothbrush in her mouth, like, what are you talking about? He's like, come look at this light. It's not the moon. And so she walks over to the window, and she's like, holy shit, that's not the moon. What is that? Let's go downstairs and get a better look at it. They wanted to go outside to look at it. So they come downstairs, they open the front door, and the kids are like, what the hell are you guys doing? Oh, there's this crazy light outside. You guys got to come see it. So now all 4 of them are out on the porch. And the vantage point of where their room was, that made the light to their extreme right. So they had to go out onto the porch and all kind of lean over the railing and look to the right to see this moon-sized object in the sky. And it was kind of orange, kind of whitish, and they're just watching it. And then out of nowhere, the light just goes vroom, and now it's right in front of their house, and it's much lower. And they're just gobsmacked watching this moon-sized object just above the trees in front of them. And then it blinks out. And they're like, whoa, that was crazy. Well, let's go back inside. It's getting cold. So the kids go in first, and they look at the TV, and the credits for the movie are running, the end of the movie. And they're like, what the hell? The movie's over. And mom was like, no, it's not. That's just the end of the other thing, and then the other thing's going to start, because it's just before 9. And they're like, no, that's the end of the movie. And so she runs in and goes to the kitchen and looks at the time on the stove. It's 11 p.m. The entire family lost 2 hours. And to this day, they don't know what happened. Sue has had a lot of different things happen to her over her life, and there's a whole chapter dedicated to her in Otherworldly Encounters with that story. So I definitely recommend checking it out. She's had a lot of weird stuff happen. You guys heard of Loren Air Force Base, I imagine? Mm-hmm. Yeah? There's been numerous reports of UFOs in and around Loren Air Force Base going back to the 50s. And northern Maine by itself, way beyond the 50s. But Loren Air Force Base in particular. I wrote about a couple of different stories from that base, one from like the mid-60s and then from one from 75. I'm going to tell you the 75 one really quickly. And then I'm going to tell you about my encounter at Loren Air Force Base. So 1975, October, happened over a 3-day period. It started out on the first date. A serviceman is out on patrol and he sees a light in the sky. He calls it in. They have it on radar. Everybody kind of freaks out and then it disappears. not the biggest deal in the world, but it's a military base that housed nuclear weapons at the time. So still kind of a big deal. The second night, same thing happens. The third night, the wing commander, who was the highest ranking officer on that base at that time, had had enough of the UFO BS. So he goes outside, because he's hearing the chatter on the radio. He goes outside, and he's like, there's no goddamn UFO. It's got to be a this or that or this or that. And then he sees it. It's none of those things. So he's on the radio screaming at the radar tower, telling them, tell me what this thing is. For some reason, that night, they weren't picking it up on radar. And he's screaming at them, saying, I'm seeing it with my GD eyes. It's there. So he calls in everybody to go and follow this thing and see what the hell it is. We're talking Maine State Police, and we're talking police at the military base itself. And they're all kind of converging over this runway area where this UFO was last spotted. And as they're getting closer, they see that the UFO has descended and is just about 3 feet hovering over the runway. So they all kind of stop maybe 50 yards in front of it. They're getting out and they're looking at this thing, and it's big and it's oval. And a lot of the officers described it as having plasma or something on the outside, all these different colors, just kind of swirling. And they're just watching it and they're looking at each other like, we don't know what to do with this. And it blinks out. A few moments later, their radios come alive, and that's the tower. They finally picked it up, and it's on radar over Nova Scotia. 10 seconds later. So that's a real cut and dry, dirty version of that story. So knowing these stories of Loring, I wanted to go up there and check it out. I wanted to write about Loring Air Force Base, and for me, being an author, I want to interview the person in person. I want to see the look in their eyes, see their body language, hear the tone of their voice. If there's an area to go to, I want to go there and just look and just be there. And Loring Air Force Base, I mean, come on, that's a cool place to go. Well, when I went, which was 2017, the base is just abandoned. Hundreds of buildings. It looks like the set of The Walking Dead, like they just walked away from it. Now, around the peripheral of the base, there's actually a lot of businesses. I think there's a Job Corps, there's a museum for the Loring people that were there, and the Department of Defense has a finance team that works there. There's a finance team, and they are fenced off and barbed wire fence, and I'm kind of wondering, the UFO government stuff that came out about 2012 in the 5-year program, I wonder if some of that paperwork went through that building. Just kind of fun to think about. So I like to do things the right way. I didn't always, but I like to do the right things now, so I tell the right kind of people what I'm doing, because I don't want to get charged for trespassing or something. So I make my way, and I arrive in Presque Isle, and the Maine State Police headquarters is right there. So I pull in there, and I let them know what I'm doing, and they're like, okay, weirdo, have a good time. But we may be patrolling that area. It's still a ways away from Presque Isle, but they have a local police unit up there, so you probably want to tell them too. I'm like, okay. So now I make my way to Limestone. And there is a police barracks there. I can't remember if it's actually a Limestone police force or what little town it is, but it's the closest one to Loring, so I'm like, that's probably where I should go. So I go inside, I tell them, they're like, all right, weirdo, have fun. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be there from like 1 a.m. to like 4 a.m. Like, you sure that's cool? And they're like, yeah, have fun. So I go there during the day to get my bearings. I've never been before. And it's just this amazing place. I don't know if you've ever been, but go. It's awesome. The runways are still there, unobstructed, all these huge hangars, and you can't go into anything. But some of the doors are open or missing, so I kind of stuck my head in and checked stuff out. I took 1,000 pictures. And I'm like, okay, I want to go to the radar tower. I want to go to the runway where the UFO was. That's a cool place to go. And there's this huge hangar that's creepy during the day. Imagine 1 a.m, it's going to be really cool. So I'm like, I want to go there too. So I go back to the hotel room, I take a nap, wake up, and I head over there. It's probably midnight. And I go to the hangar. And yeah, it's creepy at midnight. And I'm standing right outside, and it's got this big open doorway, and there's just a piece of wood from one end to the other, just so you can't cross it. You could go underneath it and stuff, but I don't know if there's cameras. Yeah, I don't want to mess around. So I stick my hand in with a recorder, and I start asking some questions to maybe catch some electronic voice phenomenon. I didn't catch anything. It was also really drizzly that night, so I was getting wet, and there was a cloud cover, and I'm like, maybe this wasn't the best time to go. But if I see a light, and it's under the cloud cover, that probably means it's not a celestial object. So I'm like, maybe that does work in my advantage to see something, and I'm like, okay, that's not Jupiter or whatever the hell. So then I make my way over to the runway. It's 1:30. It's 2 a.m. now. And I'm sitting in complete darkness, an unobstructed view of the sky, which is basically gray or black. And the car's not on, so there's no dash lights or anything. I was also a smoker at the time, so I was getting a headache. There's all this white noise from the drizzle. I'm like, I gotta get the hell out of the car. So I start up the car. I'm like overwhelmed by the lights of the dash. And I step out and I light a cigarette. And I'm like, okay, some fresh air, but I'm also smoking. But that helps a smoker. And I start to hear something. I hear something on the runway. And if you can strain your ears, I don't know if you can, but I'm straining my ears to hear. I can't see anything because it's still pitch black. And I'm like, what is that? Is that somebody walking on the runway at 2 a.m? Near my car? This is scary now. So I walk in front of the car, and it's louder. And it's weird footsteps. Well, maybe that's how an alien walks. I don't know. How do they might walk weird, and it's just a weird set of footsteps. And I'm straining to listen, and I'm right next to the car. I'm like, oh, it's my intermittent windshield wipers. I'm like, okay, I didn't die. This is cool. Let's go to the radar tower. So now I'm at the radar tower, probably 3 a.m. And I got the radar tower in front of me, and then the sky, but it's not unobstructed because of the radar tower. And the car's running. I'm not in pitch black. I'm holding my cell phone. I got a bunch of gear next to me. And I'm just kind of looking at the sky. I'm like, yep, this is awesome. And it was actually awesome to be at Loring Air Force Base at 3 a.m. It was actually awesome, but 3 hours into it and nothing's happening, you get kind of bored. So I'm looking at the radar tower, and right to the right of the radar tower, I'm there 5 minutes. There's a light in the sky, and it's under the clouds. I'm like, oh, something's happening. And I'm not an interviewer. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a writer in that moment. I'm an experiencer. I'm witnessing something, and I'm just human and watching it. I've got night vision camera, a parabolic mic, an audio recorder right next to me, and all I can do is look at it, because that's how amazing it is when something like this happens. And I'm like, whoa, I've got to get under it. That was my instincts. Get under it and see if you can get a shot of it. So I put the car in drive, and I look down. I'm like, holding cell phone, hit record. So I've got a night vision camera, hit record on cell phone. And I'm holding it. I put the car in drive, and I move 5 feet. 5 feet. And the UFO, or whatever the hell it was, didn't like it. And it does this weird wispy motion and disappears. And I caught it on camera. It's actually on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. Just search for Nomar Slevik on YouTube, go to my channel, scroll until you see Loring UFO. And you can watch it. It's really nothing more than a light in the sky. But given the context of the experiences there throughout the decades, and me going there on a whim, on a day where there's cloud cover and seeing something, it was a big deal. And I'll never forget that moment. How are we doing on time? All right. You guys heard of Mothman? Mm-hmm. Yeah. For those who haven't, it's this winged creature. Depending on who you ask, it's kind of got no shoulders. It's almost like a head and shoulders and looks like maybe a 6-foot tall owl with big red eyes. You ask somebody else, and it's this more humanoid figure. You ever see Jeepers Creepers? Kind of like that guy without the hat. Visual explanations of the creature do vary. John Keel wrote an amazing book called Mothman Prophecies. Definitely recommend you read it. Communion and Mothman Prophecies are two of the scariest books I've ever read, and they're nonfiction. And so I recommend both of those. Communion is by Whitley Strieber, so check that out. The Mothman Prophecies movie with Richard Gere is actually amazing. It does not do the book any sort of justice, so I recommend to read and to watch, but it's just a great movie to watch. It's really creepy. But I'm sitting in my room in Bangor, Maine, and I'm like, I wonder if there's ever been a Mothman in Maine. Well, how do I go about finding that? I'm kind of dumb, guys. So I just Googled it. I just Googled Mothman in Maine. And there's a story. And all I could find was the headline, Man Encounters Mothman-like Creature in Camden. I'm like, oh my, this is cool. I can't find the story, just this headline. So I have a colleague, her name's Michelle Sawyer. She wrote the book, Bigfoot in Maine, which I highly recommend you check out. So I sent that, what little information I had, I sent to her because she's brilliant. And said, can you please try to find this story for me? Maybe a week went by. She sends me the story. I got the witness's real name, and I'm good to go. So I get on my Facebook, and I start typing in that name. Well, you know, you don't realize when you type a name into Facebook how many people have that same name, nationwide, worldwide. So there were a lot of this name. So I tried to narrow it down with people from Maine and New England. And I sent a lot of messages to a lot of confused people, I think. Maybe 2 weeks later, I got a reply. It was the dude. And he's like, yeah, that's me. I saw Mothman in Camden. I'm like, no, shit, that's crazy. I'm like, here's what I'm doing. I'm a writer. I'm working on a book. Can I interview you and tell this story? And he's like, absolutely. But I don't want to do this in person. I don't want to do it over the phone. And I don't want you to use my real name. I'm like, all right, whatever the witness wants, because that's what you got to do to make them comfortable. To be able to share a story from someone is a privilege. I treat it as a privilege. So what they need me to do, I'm most likely going to do. So I said, okay. So I interviewed him over Facebook Messenger, and he told me the whole story. He gave me the street address of where this encounter happened. So his story goes as follows. It's about 2006, and he's 17 at the time. It's about 6 p.m., and he's walking from downtown Camden up to the apartment building where him and his parents live. And as he's walking, it's just about a mile away, he starts to hear this chirping sound, this loud kind of chirping sound. So he thinks there's like a rat or something at his feet. So he looks down, and he sees the shadow of something big that's flying above him. He sees that on the ground when he looks down. So he looks up, and he sees this enormous creature that's making this sound. And he said the creature's body was about 4.5 feet in length. The head, there was no discernible eyes or mouth, but it had tubes coming out of it. And he drew it, it's in the book. It's weird. And the wings looked like bat wings. And the color of it was kind of brownish, kind of transparent. And he watches it, and he's like, whoa, what is this? And it kind of does this swoop thing right over his apartment building and goes into the swamp behind his house. And so he told everybody far and wide about what he saw. He was not ashamed. He was confident. He said, I don't care what you think. This is what I saw. And his parents and his friends were like, they believed him, but they're like, maybe it was a sandhill crane or something, which has been seen in the area. And it's a bird with a pretty big wingspan. And he's like, no, I know what I saw. And what happened after that, he started having these reoccurring dreams. But he told me that he's like, I don't know, I think they're dreams, but they feel like memories. I don't know how else to describe it. But almost every night, I'm dreaming, I guess, that I'm in the same spot where I saw the creature, but there's a house that's above me. And it turns into a UFO and takes off. And he's having that dream every night. And as the school year comes to a close and he starts working and he's trying to figure out, getting all his plans together for college and all that good stuff, it all kind of fades away. He starts freshman year at a college. He comes back that summer after going to freshman year, and he's back in Camden working, and he's on a day off riding around town with his buddy. And as he and his buddy are riding around town, this thing smacks into his windshield. And he described it as like this paper mache type, like wet paper mache type mess, just like slapped onto his windshield. But they could see a wing, and it looked like the same type of wing of the large creature that he saw. And so they kind of roll to a stop, and they're just staring at this thing that's on the windshield in front of them. And as soon as the car comes to a stop, that wing flutters, it comes to life and takes off. And he was like, they were both like, what the hell was that? And they also reported having like this ominous, eerie feeling associated with it, more so than just this weird thing hitting the windshield. Like something more happened, or something more was nefarious about it, they kind of thought. And he's like, that might be a juvenile version of what I saw last year. And the guy's like, I don't know, man, but that was a weird freaking bird. I don't know what the hell that was. So, since I have the address, I go down to Camden, and I measured the eaves of his apartment building. And from eave to eave, where he saw this creature fly over, he said the wingspan went from one side of the eave to the other. When I measured it, it was 27 feet. That's like the size of a Cessna or something, like a small Cessna. And that's how big the wingspan was, according to him. So I have a girlfriend at the time, and she has a son, and I love this kid to death. He was 10, 11 years old at the time, and he is still in my life. He's 17 now, and I love him right to death. But we all decided to make a trip out of going to Camden for a few nights so I could investigate at night, and we could do some fun stuff in Camden during the day. Well, the kiddo is like, can I go with you on one of your night things? So we look at Mom, and she's like, all right. And he tends to get scared of the dark. And I'm like, are you sure you're going to be okay? He's like, I'm with you. It's fine. Okay. So we head out. It's probably 1 o'clock in the morning. We both took naps. I'm not a terrible person. And I got him some Sour Patch Kids, so maybe I'm a little terrible. And we park at the swamp where this thing supposedly flew into. And I played him the trailer to the Mothman Prophecies. Not my best moment, because it freaked him out. And all he could focus on were the red eyes. So we're sitting there, about an hour goes by. The bugs are horrible, so we're putting the windows up, we're putting them down, we're putting them up, just because it's unbearable almost. And he goes, hey, I've been seeing something over here, and I've seen it a few times now, but I didn't want to mention anything until I was sure. I'm like, okay, well, what do you see? I see red eyes. So I'm thinking, okay, he's a little freaked out. He wants to impress me, or, you know how kids are. And he's like, look over here. You see that tree? And there was a tree probably 20, 25 yards out. And there was a really big branch coming off of it. And I'd estimate maybe 10 feet up. He's like, look just under that branch. Just watch there. That's where it always is. Okay, buddy. Holy shit, there's red eyes. I see it. I see the red eyes. And then they go away. He said, you see it? Yeah. We keep watching. We see him again. We see him 3 or 4 more times. Is that Mothman? I'm like, I don't know, buddy. I don't know, but that was pretty cool, huh? And he's like, yeah, that was really cool. So we go back to the hotel room. go back to sleep, all that good stuff. I wake up in the morning and I go back over there by myself because I want to see this area in the daylight. Sure enough, there's a tree. Sure enough, there's the branch. And yeah, I'd say that's about 10 feet up, maybe even 11. And I'm not about to like walk in the swamp or anything to like go check out that area. But I did check out where we parked just to see if there were any weird footprints or anything. There was nothing. But what I did notice was beyond the tree, I saw a truck go by. I don't know how far it was, but there's a road beyond the tree, beyond the swamp. And it might have been the back red lights of cars randomly going by. I'm like, if it's possible that it's something else, I can't say I saw the Mothman of Camden, you know? But I can write a really cool story about this little kid and me going over there and explaining what they saw and be honest about it could have been a car. What's interesting, though, is that the eyes or whatever it was, they would just come on. And then they would just, almost like it was a really slow closing of the eyes. There wasn't any movement to it. As you would think maybe a car with the lights you're seeing in the dark might move through the trees, there wasn't a movement. So I can't say for sure it was a car, but it's possible. So I'm not sure what that was, but we had a really good time in Camden those few days. And he and I still talk about the red eyes we saw at the swamp in Camden. It was a good time.